A very good evening and welcome to the English News Bulletin here on Rwanda Television. We begin with the headlines. Rwanda's High Commissioner to Kenya has called on the international community to move beyond acknowledging past failures and take concrete action to prevent genocide. The President of the Supreme Court joined students and leaders of the University of Rwanda Huye campus in the 32nd commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. My name is Olive, and it's always a pleasure to have you on board. Now let's kick off today's edition. Rwanda's High Commissioner to Kenya has called on the international community to move beyond acknowledging past failures and take concrete action to prevent genocide. He was speaking at a symposium on genocide held in Nairobi as part of ongoing commemoration activities. William Evans kicks us off tonight.
The symposium brought together diplomats, scholars, and policymakers to reflect on genocide prevention and Rwanda's journey of rebuilding after the genocide against the Tutsi. The event, organized by Rwanda's embassy in Kenya, forms part of the 32nd commemoration. Rwanda's ambassador to Kenya, Eugene Rwamucho, told participants that the failure of the international community to act on early warning signs allowed the genocide to unfold with devastating speed and scale.
We gather at a time when the imperative to prevent genocide is as urgent as ever. History has taught us at a very heavy cost that genocide is not a spontaneous event. It is a process often marked by warning signs that are visible, recognizable, and tragically too often ignored. Among these warning signs are genocide denial and revisionism, dehumanization of the victims. A lot of planning goes into it, a lot of awareness, mobilization goes into it. This is exactly what happened in Rwanda, and it went on for decades. And unfortunately, it could have been stopped, but no action was ever taken to do that at a very, very tragic cost. So these signs are not merely distortions of historical truth. They are dangerous tools that can enable future violence if we continue to ignore them, because Rwanda happened. Before Rwanda, there was the Jewish Holocaust, and we had committed to never again. But we saw Rwanda unfolding, took no action. We therefore need to be vigilant, which is why we host a symposium like this, to ensure that we remain focused, that we don't commit the mistakes of the past.
Ambassador Rwamucho also urged global actors to go further, not only acknowledging past shortcomings, but to actively encounter genocide denial, hate speech, and the culture of impunity. Former United Nations Special Advisor on Genocide Prevention, Alice Wairimu, emphasized the importance of accurate language, calling on the international community to constantly refer to the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda and reject narratives that distort or minimize it.
To understand how well planned this was that the denial actually began when the genocide was actually underway. And it began in the Security Council of all places, the United Nations Security Council, where, incredibly, that it's almost impossible to believe that at the time when the genocide was happening, that Rwanda was represented by an ambassador of the regime that was perpetrating the genocide against the Tutsi in the Security Council. And so therefore, the Security Council was hearing every day from somebody representing the perpetrators, somebody representing murderers, speaking to the Security Council. And incredibly, the same Security Council, when all this was going on during the genocide itself, during the 100 days, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the then Minister of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda, made his presentation, putting out the points for denial of the genocide. So when the people were actually tried, the genocidaires were being tried at the ICTR, the same denial points that had been put out by this minister to the Security Council. So just to understand the efficiency, of denial. And so the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. So not only did the ICTR name it so, But we have a UN resolution that designated April 7th as the International Day for remembering the genocide against the Tutsi. But at the same time, it also named this genocide, gave it its proper name, the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And so each time you hear anybody say Rwandan genocide, and if any of you is using the term Rwandan genocide, you are using the language of genocide deniers. Because the Tutsi were targeted for complete annihilation and extinction, and anybody who died, the Belgian peacekeepers, they died because they were standing in the way of the complete annihilation of the Tutsi people.
Kenyan legal scholar and Professor Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba reflected on Africa's historical challenges from colonialism to mass atrocities, warning that repeated global inaction has enabled such tragedies to occur. He noted that despite repeated commitments of never again, the world failed to prevent the genocide against the Tutsi, which claimed the lives of more than 1 million people.
After 100 days, the pessimists were eloquent. They had written Rwanda's obituary. They said of Rwanda it would never rise again. But a few brave Rwandese, led by His Excellency Paul Kagame, entered the country, did what they had to do, cleaned up Kigali, where bodies were littered. They went into the villages, cleaned it up, set up a government, started the process of rebuilding. Rwanda, like the phoenix, rose from our ashes. Today, permit me this latitude with the Genocide Memorial Museum. Rwanda has become a mecca for those who want to see how things are organized. If you want to see how roads ought to be built, you go to Kigali. If you want to see how roundabouts are manicured, you go to Kigali. If you want to move away from the disorder of border borders to be found in Kampala and Nairobi, you go to Kigali. If you want to see policemen that reject your money when you want to corrupt them, you go to Kigali. If you want to see how football stadia and how basketball pitches are built within time and within budget, you go to Kigali. Kigali has become our pride, and when you go to Kigali and you want to see how technology is being used to good effect, you go to Kigali. That is how Kigali has risen, and that has happened within 32 years. Those who were born in 1994 are alive and well, and we have something to say about Kigali. So even as we are sitting here today, we cannot allow ourselves the luxury of being sad. Sadness is for the weak.
Professor Lumumba also commended Rwanda's efforts in rebuilding unity and reconstructing the nation, saying its experience offers lessons to the rest of the world. Participants at the symposium further discussed the role of governments in preventing future atrocities, emphasizing inclusive development, social cohesion, and the rejection of all forms of discrimination. William Evans, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, William. Now moving ahead, the President of the Supreme Court, Domitila Mukantaganzwa, joined students and leaders of the University of Rwanda who were campus in the 32nd commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. She said that remembrance should be a time to reflect on the kind of Rwandan citizens the country desires, because having educated people without humanity is of no benefit to the nation. William Evans continues.
During a dialogue reflecting on the history that led the country to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, the president of Ibuka, Dr. Philbert Gakwenzire, explained that for a long time, history had been deliberately distorted with the aim of oppressing Tutsi in different sectors, including education. Students at this university said that remembrance is an important opportunity to learn the true history of Rwanda. They noted that they will continue to fight against any ideology that could once again fuel hatred and division, the same factors that led Rwanda to the genocide against the Tutsi. They also committed themselves to fighting against those who distort history. Honorable Domitira Mukanaganzwa urged teachers and parents to strengthen the teaching of values to children, promote quality education, increase efforts in research, and document the true history, emphasizing that educated people without humanity are what led Rwanda to the genocide against the Tutsi. She also reminded the students that they are the driving force of the country and the leaders of tomorrow. She encouraged them to be patriotic, taking inspiration from leaders such as His Excellency Paul Kagame, who led the liberation struggle and stopped the genocide against the Tutsi. During the commemoration event, tribute was also paid to innocent Tutsi victims laid to rest at the University Memorial Site, including former teachers, students, and staff members of the former National University of Rwanda. The university's memorial site is the final resting place of 563 victims of the genocide against the Tutsi.
Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ambassador Olivier Nduhungirehe, stated that the United Nations and the international community should understand that the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is not only a defined crime by the law, but also a 100-day period of suffering endured by Rwandans. He made these remarks during the 32nd commemoration of the former United Nations employees in Rwanda who were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994.
During the 32nd commemoration of former United Nations staff in Rwanda who were killed in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Agnes Twagiramaria, the wife of Turatsinze Emmanuel, a United Nations employee in Rwanda who was killed during the genocide against the Tutsi, said that her husband was killed in a particular cruel manner. I remember there was a place where he used to hide me in a neighbor's brick structure. He knew I was there. They came and asked him where I was. He went to get me, thinking they were going to save me, but that was not their intention. They began to hack him with machetes, and the one who was behind me also attacked me. I begged him for mercy, telling him to take everything I had, but not to kill me. I gave him the money we had left. They continued attacking him, and he ran out screaming. When he got outside, there were soldiers who shot him in the head, and part of it was blown off. The acting resident coordinator of the United Nations in Rwanda, Fatmata Loveta Sese, commended the organization Ibuka of enduring difficult times and as survivors managing to rebuild their lives.
Including Ibuka, this is an organization of survivors, whose very name means remember. In Ibuka, I remember, in Kinyarwanda. You carry wounds that the world cannot fully comprehend. You have lived through loss that no words can measure. And yet, with remarkable strength and resilience, you have rebuilt your lives. This was not an accident of history. It was not unforeseen, nor was it inevitable. It was a genocide, planned, incited, and executed. It began with words, the propaganda, and with dehumanization. This was not a war nor a conflict. It was a planned and systematic murder of a group of people. We must say this with clarity and absolute humility. The international community failed Rwanda. General Romeo Delay, the UN force commander in Rwanda, sent urgent warnings to United Nations headquarters months before the genocide began. Those warnings were not acted upon with the urgency they demanded. The United Nations acknowledged this failure. We keep acknowledging this failure. And it's by no means a way that it can serve as a consolation, but it's as a way for us to be determined that never again is not just words. It's actually something that is deeply meant. That acknowledgement must continue to guide us, not as a source of shame alone, but as the foundation of a renewed and unbreakable commitment. Never again, not just as a slogan, but as a living obligation.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Olivier Nduhungirehe, stated that although this is the 32nd commemoration, it is saddening that there are still people who wish for such things to happen again.
Ethnic violence has continued to soar in Eastern DRC. State-sponsored hate speech against the Congolese Tutsi, including the Banyamulenge, has been voiced by senior government officials on official platforms using the same language, the same words, the same codes as those of the period preceding the genocide in 1994. Rwanda therefore calls on the United Nations not to fail this region once again, but to stand firmly against hatred, injustice, and the seeds of genocide.
During the 32nd commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, tribute was paid to former United Nations employees in Rwanda who were killed during the genocide.
Now, survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi in the former Nyarugenge commune in Kigali and its surrounding areas say that the good governance of the RPF in Inkotanyi and its policy of promoting unity among Rwandans helped them forgive those who killed their family members and join others in rebuilding the country. We have details.
April 22nd, 1994 remains an unforgettable date in the lives of survivors at Sainte Famille, as recalled by Marie Grace Mukabyagaju in her testimony. During a dialogue on the history of the planning and execution of the genocide, Colonel Desire Migambi explained that RPA had to use both physical and emotional strength to rescue Tutsi who had sought refuge at Saint Paul and Sainte Famille. Survivors of the genocide from these areas say they rebuilt their lives because they chose to work together with others in building a country free from division through forgiving those who harmed them. Veteran politician and chairperson of Rwanda Elders Advisory Forum, Honorable Tito Rutaremara, urged citizens to remain committed to the unity that was secured through the sacrifices and blood of those who fought to liberate the country. Survivors at Sainte Famille and Saint Paul continue to highlight the role that Father Munyeshyaka played in the killings of the Tutsi who had sought refuge there. Young people were also reminded of their responsibility to preserve the achievements the country has made and to build on them further while fighting against those who seek to take Rwanda back to the dark past it overcame.
Moving ahead, as Rusizi district marked the 32nd commemoration of children and women killed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, residents were urged to instill values of unity and love within their families, as harmful teachings were among the causes that led Rwanda to the genocide against the Tutsi that claimed lives of more than 1 million Tutsi.
Survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi say that women and children faced extreme suffering because, as vulnerable groups, they were especially targeted by killers. Many women were also subjected to gender-based violence. This was shared by Lewansi Musabyimana and Nazali Yakana Kuze, both survivors from the former Bugarama commune in the then Cyangugu prefecture. The 32nd commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi, with special focus on women and children who were killed, was held in Muganza sector at the district level. Clementine Ayinhamie, representing the National Women's Council in the district, commended the courage of genocide survivors who overcame the painful history they went through and became the first to contribute to the unity and resilience of Rwandans. The Vice Mayor of Rusizi District in charge of social affairs, Francine Mukakarisa, reminded Rwandans in general that they should teach members of their families the Ndi Umunyarwanda programs so that national unity continues to grow, starting with the young generation. There are no exact figures of the number of women and children killed during the genocide against the Tutsi in Rusizi District. However, at the Muganza Memorial Site alone, 241 bodies are laid to rest there, including 38 women and 8 children, all victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Now at Bunyonga Memorial Site in Kamonyi District, 11 newly discovered bodies of Tutsi victims were given a dignified burial this Wednesday during the 32nd commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Karama sector, where calls were made for those withholding information about hidden bodies to come forward.
At Bunyonga Memorial Site, one of the 3 genocide memorials in Kamonyi District, a total of 17 bodies of Tutsi victims recovered from different locations were laid to rest. Speaking on behalf of the families burying their loved ones, Dr. Karangwa Desire condemned those who continue to withhold information about the whereabouts of victims' bodies. On Bibare Hill, located in Bunyonga cell of Karama sector, many Tutsi had sought refuge and initially tried to defend themselves, as explained by Nirere Jeanne, who lost several members of her family there, including her parents and 5 siblings. The governor of the southern province, Alice Kaitesi, urged everyone to strengthen the unity of Rwandans and reflect on some of the challenges that still threaten the choice and values Rwandans have embraced. Bunyonga Memorial Site is the final resting place of more than 13,000 victims of the genocide against the Tutsi.
Now, the private sector players say that international events hosted in Rwanda provide significant opportunities that contribute to the growth of their businesses and the country's overall development. These remarks were made during discussions reviewing the progress of preparations for the upcoming Africa CEO Forum 2026. Adam Squizera takes us through.
International conferences, particularly those held in Rwanda, are often seen as a platform to showcase the country's investment and trade opportunities to global investors. They also serve as a gateway for the local private sector actors, connecting them with major investment institutions. Shema Fabrice, Director General Africa Medical Supply, highlighted the role of such events play in the opening up the opportunities for Rwanda's private sector. This was also reiterated by the chairperson of the Private Sector Federation, PSF, Francois Twagirumukiza, who noted that beyond these forums and agreements, local businesses are increasingly taking initiative to fully utilize on such opportunities.
After this kind of meetings, there is follow-up. I still, on that point, appreciate RDB. They try also to follow up with us and help us where necessary to try to get the benefits from this kind of meetings. The tangible then benefits, I can say, is after this kind of meetings, first of all, there are B2B meetings. After this, we know who we can connect with. We call different companies to come here from Rwanda. They meet with our guests. We help them to connect, even to know who to connect with from our chambers.
The CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, RDB, Jean-Guy Africa, stated that events like the Africa CEO Forum, scheduled to take place in Kigali, not only benefit private sector players, but also directly contribute to national development through the investment projects they generate.
Specific to Golden Circle members, so the top companies within the private sector. And it was very interesting because this will be the 3rd time that Rwanda organizes this event. And there were multiple testimonies from private sector members who benefited in the past. So those who are coming in for the first time, relatively new members of the Golden Circle, could hear in real time the benefits of participating in events, what they can get from it. And for us as the Rwanda Development Board, but more generally the government of Rwanda, we continue to look for opportunities to position Rwanda as a global hub for services, investments, logistics, and of course tourism, and also conferencing. So the conferencing part is really where this event comes in. It's the biggest private sector gathering on the continent. It's happening in Kigali for the 3rd time, and it's because the organizers trust in our ability, in our logistics capabilities and our ability to organize events of this scale. So it brings multiple benefits for us, both at the level of the country, but also private sector participants in their individual capacities.
This will be the 3rd time Rwanda hosting the Africa CEO Forum, an event which is set to take place from May 14th to 15th, 2026, and expected to bring together more than 2,500 participants from across Africa and beyond. Adam Squizera, RwandaTV News.
Now, Rwanda is investing heavily in industrial development with plans to spend more than 127 billion Rwandan francs on industrial parks across the country. The government says the move is expected to generate over 1.4 trillion Rwandan francs in revenue by 2029 while creating tens of thousands of jobs. William Evans takes us through.
Industrialization remains a key pillar of Rwanda's economic strategy. 4 industrial parks in Muhanga, Bugesera, Rwamagana and Musanze are at the center of this push. In the current 2025-2026 fiscal year alone, the government has already invested around 10 billion Rwandan francs into these zones. Manufacturers operating in Muhanga and Bugesera along with other clients said that there has been noticeable progress in the quality of locally produced goods.
Ku isoko rya hano mu Rwanda abakiriya barahari baratuyobotse.
We have clients on Rwandan market that have loved what we produce locally. We also have clients who come from across the region almost thrice a month.
At the moment we are still waiting for the connection to grid, but fortunately I think this month it will be solved. So once we have the electricity, then we will be able to start putting the factory into operation, and I think by the end of the year, after the soft commissioning, then it will be in full operation. So the government has helping us a lot, and I think now when you were entering into the factory you realize that they are expanding the road. It was not easy before, but now it's doing well. As I said before, the electricity is also about to be connected. So, and we are also talking to government to help us with some areas that needs to be recovered from the environmental point of view, and one of them you can see it in the backside. So we try to get access to those areas, and then help work together with the institutions to make a recovery plan and to put those areas into operation. So this is what you see here, and you are very welcome.
This is something very special to us as Rwandan producers, because we used to import almost all things, but now many of our local factories are close and producing high quality products, and this makes access easy and very cheap. By 2029, the industrial parks are expected to create more than 63,000 jobs, with some workers already employed in these facilities.
In my personal development, I have been able to move from one step to another, and also being able to support my family in cases of emergency. I dream of being self-employed in the future.
I work in construction and I've been doing it for some time now, but the more I do it, the more experience and skills I gain. Under Rwanda's second National Strategy for Transformation, NST2, the government plans to invest a total of 127 billion Rwandan francs in these industrial zones by 2029. However, figures show that since 2013, only 27 billion Rwandan francs, about 10% of the required 252 billion, has been dispersed. Economists say that careful planning remains essential. They argue that feasibility studies should guide the development of industrial zones, ensuring alignment with domestic production capacity and long-term market demand.
When you start a factory, you need to make sure that the raw materials will be available. So that's what we call backward integration. And you need to make sure that the market is there and it will be responsive. National market, international market. So we need to provide support also as far as what we call forward integration is concerned. So a company might not be able to do both the integration, but we need as a government to provide incentives to the people who will be providing the backward and the people at the front, the last mile for the product. Another thing we need to improve on is the vertical integration. So any company, any business starting here needs support. So the supporting activities include the manpower, the train, the workforce, and it includes also the logistics, include the roads. So some of the basic infrastructure are there, of course, but we need more support service because, for example, when a company starts a business in Rwanda, we need to provide those services which make sure that he or she can be operative the next after the RDB registration.
The Minister of Trade and Industry says that the government is working closely with the private sector to expand infrastructure within these parks. After we have established primary infrastructure, there were times investors join us in compensating citizens, and this is accounted for in the budget. Due to some challenges arising from non-TENAF funds, I can say that having primary infrastructure in these industrial spaces is not yet at 100% completion. Therefore, we still have work to do in the coming budget. Despite the challenges, Rwanda's industrial sector continues to grow. In 2025, it recorded an 11% expansion, surpassing the 9.5% target set under NSC2. Meanwhile, the Kigali Special Economic Zone in Masoro alone exported goods worth $290 million and employs around 22,000 permanent workers. William Evans, RwandaTV News.
Now this brings us to the end of tonight's bulletin. Thank you so much, viewers, for being with us throughout the edition. We wish you a good night.